Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning devotion with me, Beau. Hope you guys are doing good today. Today's going to be Titus chapter 1, starting a new book of the Bible, January 9th, 9:44. A little bit later than what I'm kind of used to in the devotions. Usually it's around 9 a.m., Monday through Friday. And these devotions are just me going through the Bible. I would do this normally. This is what I normally like to do, is just go through the Bible. So a lot of people, when they do their devotions, they do pick up a book like Utmost First Highest, different by Oswald Chambers, or, there's these different little books that you can pick up. I don't really do that. I mean, in Alcoholics Anonymous, I remember always having a little meditation book. You might have seen those where they're just like, it's by day, every day you pick it up and you kind of go through a book. But, I really prefer just going from Genesis to Revelation through the Bible. So that's what I do all my devotions. My name's Beau. You could always just go to YouTube, put in my French-Canadian name right there, Beau into the search bar, and you can come to the actual channel that has all the different playlists of the books of the Bible. Now, this is my second time through the Bible, and it's amazing how many things you can listen to on the Bible on YouTube. And it has really, it doesn't actually go through the Bible. And so if you're not going through the scriptures, if you're not just going through books of the Bible, it's hard to understand the big pictures. Why our world is the way it is. Why we are the way we are. Why the world outside of us is the way it is, why there's no God when I walk outside, why things seem to have a reflection of perfection but aren't perfect in and of themselves. There's something amiss in everything. Who is Jesus? What does the term Messiah mean? Who is the Holy Spirit? These are things people debate all the time, which is really funny to me, because it's just, if you just pick up the Bible and you just read it, it's all right there. It's not rocket science. It's not weird. You don't need a degree or anything. It's very plain. It's just, unfortunately, us human beings really love kind of a lot of snapshot stuff, and it's hard for us to be patient and just read through something. And you might find that in your own life in many ways, but we have a lot of flaws as humans. Titus chapter 1, the Bible certainly reveals those flaws in some pretty radical, rude awakening kind of ways too. You're not going to like the Bible too much if you kind of want a kind of self-help book. I kind of grew up that way too, a little self-helpy out in Southern California. But the Bible's not going to be that way. It's going to kind of reveal a morality of perfection, and then you're going to have to look at this reality of look into, in a sense, perfection. You're going to look into it, and you're going to see a lot of interesting flaws in your life. We're going to see that today too in Titus chapter 1. This is a book written by Paul to a guy named Titus that we've already seen he's mentioned many times in his writings. This guy was a companion of Paul, a fellow co-laborer in the ministry, in the work of the ministry. And just like a lot of you guys are with me, we're all co-laboring together, right, in the ministry, meaning we're all serving people, serving the body of Christ, that kind of thing. So it's a really great book in that way. Titus, it says, I left you on the island of Crete. Crete, that's a real place. Look it up on a map. It's not some fairy tale place. It says, so you could complete the work there and appoint elders in each town I instructed you. So that's the purpose of the letter. It's not kind of weird. It's not odd. It's, hey, you know what? I need you to go there, and I need you to get some leaders in that area. It says an elder must live a life that's blameless. He must be faithful to his wife, and his children must be believers who don't have a reputation for being wild or rebellious. A church leader is a manager of God's household, so he must live a blameless life. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered. He must not be a heavy drinker, violent, or dishonest with money. Rather, he must enjoy having guests in his home. He must love what is good. He must live wisely, and he must be just. He must live a devout and disciplined life. He must have a strong belief in a trustworthy message he was taught. Then he will be able to encourage others with wholesome teachings and show those opposed it where they are wrong. For there are many rebellious people who engage in useless talk and deceive others. Okay, so Paul gives Titus a great list that we saw again in a previous book, 1 Timothy, on leadership. Living a life that's really, you can't just look at and go, bang, bang, there's this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, right? This idea of blameless. You might have a version that says above reproach. This kind of idea is that there's nothing really you can just look at in that person's life and go, yeah, I see this flaw, this flaw, this flaw, this flaw. This person's really angry. This person's getting ripped all the time. I see this person at the bar, I see this going on, and he's always checking out things on his phone. There's nothing that's just really out of control, when you're just looking at the person. I love that, Now, above reproach doesn't mean, of course, that it's without sin. If you say you're without sin, you're a liar. That's what the scriptures teach. But it certainly is the idea of someone who's kind of on the right track, kind of really working on stuff. Kind of doing that inventory, thinking about, man, what are the areas I need to change in my life? And really those things are implemented. Things are happening. And so you see that it has to do with his family life. What's their family life like? And does the family love him? Do their kids love him? Does he have a good relationship with his spouse? Is it a person who manages money well, or is out of control with money? Is it a person who's quick to everything? Do they lack patience? Are they quick-tempered? Are they quick to get angry? Are they a person who's dishonest? in their business dealings? Do they get angry often? Do you find that they're very aggressive, and kind of outburst of anger? Is that what's going on in their life? So it's really looking at the character of a person. And now when we look at Jesus, when we look at the Messiah, we see that Messiah was, beautiful in all ways. And we can compare lists like this to Jesus and go, does Jesus match that? And we go, yeah, he does. So you can see what it's saying is, hey, is there life moving in the way of Jesus? Being more like Jesus. Notice it talks about a disciplined life, a devout life, right? A person who loves what is good, who actually invites people into their home. Now, this is interesting, but if you are a leader, you need to be able to live in a place where you can invite people into your home. Meaning if you're a leader and you live far away from the congregation, too far from the congregation, then it's very difficult to invite people into your home. Meaning a pastor, a leader is concerned about being close to the people, being somewhat close to the congregation, right? You can't have someone come into your house, dude, if you're way, that kind of thing. So it's interesting how it is an investment. There's no doubt about it. Notice it talks about that he must have a strong belief in the trustworthy message he was taught. Meaning an elder must be someone who's respecting the pastors that have taught them. If you're a pastor and you're teaching, and you are in contention with those that have taught you, it might be best just to take a break and get those relationships right. Those that have mentored you, those that love you, those who have fed into you. You don't want someone to be a leader who has been contentious with, those that have taught them. And so there's these divisions that take place. You can read this list, and the reason why I'm breaking it down like this is just to let you know that, boy, when you really, really look at this list, you might, as a pastor or a leader or a deacon, whatever leadership in a church, as I am and have been for 32 years, you might look at this list and you're going to go, oh boy. Meaning there's two types of people. There's a person who's going to look at this list and go, oh, I've got it. I've done it all. I do it all. Oh, yeah. Or there's going to be the person who looks at this list and goes, or maybe there's three people. There's a person that says, hey, I've failed in every aspect of this. I'm a failure. And then there's a person that might, I guess the third person might look at this and go, oh my gosh, like I am in leadership, but I do see some chinks in the armor. I do some things. I do see some things that, God, I need the Lord to work in my heart in this area. Yeah. Some people are in church leadership because they constantly want to be. They're constantly pushing. I want to be in church leadership. Push. And those people, it's scary because they might look at a list like this and go, yes, I'm qualified. And they keep pushing, lack of patience, right? Quick to move. And that's not good. And we saw that don't be quick to lay hands on people. We saw that in Timothy. Don't be quick to just anoint people and just put them in places of power, right? They fall into the snare of the devil, it says. And then there's people, and I definitely fall into the camp of where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I on an elder board? Like, at 21 years old, that kind of thing where you're unsure. You're very reluctant. You feel very Moses-like. I can't even talk. You feel like Jeremiah. Hey, man, what am I doing? I can't go to Israel. You just feel very reluctant. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And you find a lot of flaws in yourself. And so you're kind of treading really lightly. You're just like, I don't know, those kind of, so, it's interesting. This is almost like a little bit of a, what is it? Litmus test, where when you read it, you can kind of tell what's going on in you by how you react to the list that it gives. You can find if you're prideful, you can find if you're impatient, you can find if you're presumptuous, you can find if you're depressed, you can find if you kind of beat yourself up. You can find a lot of different things just by reading this list. And you can see other characters in the Bible have those same feelings that you do as well. Some are prideful, some are arrogant, some continue to harden their heart even though they're in incredible positions of power. There's all kinds of people in the Bible that fit that category. There's a lot of people in positions of power that struggle with many things, drinking, lust, sexual lust, all kinds of stuff. So nothing new under the sun. But this is a list that's given, meaning the morality always of the Bible in Messiah is perfection. It's the perfect. We're always looking at the perfect. We're always striving to the perfect, to the complete. It says, for there are many rebellious people who, it says, are deceived and deceive others. And this is especially true of those who insist on circumcision for salvation. Those that, again, go back to the law, go back to how we should be saved. Very important topic. Do I know how salvation works today? Or am I confused somewhat on that subject? But it says, hey, make sure that you have someone in a place of power who really understands salvation, what the doctrine of salvation is and what it ain't. If someone's wanting you all men to be circumcised in their physical bodies in order to be saved, they shouldn't be in leadership. They must be silenced because they are luring whole families away from the truth by their false teaching, and they do it only for money, man. They're always asking for money. Always, always, always. Even one of their own men, a prophet from Crete, has said this about them. The people of Crete are always liars, cruel animals, and lazy gluttons. So there seems to be a little bit of a tag on the people of Crete, meaning even their own poets, even their own people, their own prophets kind of talk about themselves, make little jokes about themselves because they tend to be liars, cruel, and lazy. That sounds kind of like my junior high years, actually. Kind of, lying all the time, kind of cruel and lazy, in many ways. So, I could relate, and they tend to, of course, probably, make fun of one another and joke about one another and, have a lot of rash jokes. But it says they must stop listening to Jewish myths and the commands of people who have turned away from the truth. Jewish myths, Jewish mysticism. Be very, very careful about this. This is a warning over and over in the New Testament. Do not go the way of Jewish mysticism. It has no bearing on your salvation. It has no edification purposes. What we find edifying is learning about the work and purpose and love of the Messiah. That's what we find beautiful and edifying in our lives and helping us and transforming us and regulating us in our life. So a strong warning about not getting into Jewish mysticism right here. Everything is pure to those whose hearts are pure, but nothing is pure to those who are corrupt and unbelieving, because their minds and consciousness are corrupted. Such people claim they know God, but they deny him by the way they live. They are detestable and disobedient, worthless for doing anything good. So there are people who claim God. They claim to know God. They claim to be close to God. And yet the way they lived certainly tells a different tale. And it says, everything is pure to those whose hearts are pure. But to those hearts who are not pure, they're corrupt and unbelieving, meaning there's always this other motive. There's always this other thing that's behind it. There's not really just a pure heart to serve, but the service is for something else. There's another thing, there's another need that's being scratched. So is my service in the church, is it scratching an itch in my life? I do it really not out of a pure motivation, but it's because, man, I want more money, or I want more fame, or I want more reputation, or I want, some other thing. I like to be around a particular group of people, and this kind of scratches that itch. These kind of things. I hope you can see what Paul's getting at is that when you look at particular behaviors of us people, you can kind of start seeing what really the motivation is that's within us. Is it really a pure motivation? And then it starts kind of folding out. Why are you really going to the gym? Well, I like to work out at the gym. The gym's great. I love the motivation at the gym. But then you really, start seeing what really is the motivation of going to the gym, right? Oh, you get to talk to a particular person, and maybe you get closer to that person. Oh, you like leading worship at the church. That's great. That's so awesome. You love leading worship. But why do you like leading worship? There's this kind of, power thing that you get out of it. Man, you feel great being around, people and having them watch you play and hey, that's a great thing what you're doing, that kind of thing. You see it, right? And then what is the real motivation? See, in a leadership position, if the real motivation is God, then it's not really going to be about me. I don't need to sing on the stage all the time. I don't even need to play on the stage. And maybe the best way I can show that is by not playing for years. And of course, I've certainly done that. Even though I've done music ministry at times off and on in the church, there's been stints where I've gone 10 years without playing, leading worship at the church or stuff like that. 5 years, 10 years. But if my motivation was, no, it's got to be my thing. It's got to be my thing. This is I got the corner on this. No one can teach from the pulpit other than me. No one can do the sound ministry other than me. No one can do men's ministry other than me. No one can, what is really the motivation? What is really moving? I really like to go to church, but I really like to sit in this particular area because there's this another person who sits in that area. Oh man, we could see how our hearts go, oh man, to the pure, all things are pure, right? Oh. But nothing is pure to those who are corrupt and unbelieving because their minds and consciousnesses are corrupted. Oh, man, is my mind and my conscience corrupted? Do I claim to know God, but really the motivations are all showing something different? Man, isn't that radical? Now, for Titus, this was like, hey, this was an instruction to say, hey, dude, look at the motivations of where people are at. What's the motivations of their heart? Do they want to get in leadership for the right reasons? That's really what this chapter is all about. Sure, we can pick apart ourselves and go, hey, man, my heart pure? And hopefully you go, man, it's not as pure as I want it to be. That's for sure. And we bring corruption before God. Jesus, help me with the corrupt heart that I have, right? Help me, sustain me, help my motives be pure. I give you my heart. I give you my life. Boy, there's areas I need to confess to you. The greed, the covetousness that moves within me, the desires that override everything, the fear, the insecurities, those kind of things. But then there's people who aren't doing that at all, right? They just are bold to go in particular directions thinking they're right, when really their motivations, they can't even see it, but their motivations are all corrupt. And he says, Titus, you need to pay attention to that. So yeah, we look within, we see what's going on within us, and we do see a lot of failure as Christians. But then there are those that are corrupted and unbelieving, but man, are using God for financial gain, using the church life for being a famous musician. There's a lot of corruption within it as well. the wheat and the tares growing together, right? Wheat, tares, good, not so good. And so we see that, God, in leadership, in any aspect of leadership, we should be slow to put people in places of leadership, and really just to be evaluating where people's hearts are at. Really, can you be patient? Can you be kind? Can you have any self-control? Can you, be faithful? Fruits of the Spirit. So really cool chapter. Hey, you guys have a great day. Chapter 1 of Titus. What a blessing this book is. And as always, hope to see you guys soon and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.